Hey, this is Jeremy Goodrich, owner of Shine Insurance Agency and your host for the New Home Buyer's Guide. Today, we're going to dig into something that I've been looking forward to creating a video on for a really long time. And it's just simply, should I buy a house? Or maybe better, should you buy a house? Is it the right time? All the kinds of things that we think about. Does it make sense to buy a house? By the end of this video, I'm hoping that you'll have some insight into whether it's the right time for you to start looking for your dream home and purchase a home for yourself. So what will we learn? Well, we'll dig into these 4 questions. The first one is, does it make financial sense? Buying a house is not all about the money, but it is one of the biggest investments you might make over the course of your life. And so it's smart to think about money, of course, as a part of the conversation about whether you should purchase a home. Is it the right time? There are right times and wrong times to buy a house. We'll talk a little bit about that. What if my life changes? We'll talk a little bit about what parts of life are the right times to buy and maybe when they aren't so much. And then finally, what are the hidden costs? Sometimes we get caught up in the surface of the home buying process, and there are definitely some hidden costs that I'll uncover for you a little bit so that you can have a sense of what all is in there. And then finally, the 5th question that just might make you change your mind about the process. We'll dig into that at the very end. So let's get going. Let's start with money sense. Does it make sense to buy a house right now based purely on money? And I'm going to create a scenario for you that'll just give you a sense. Obviously, I don't know what your particular scenario is, but let's just say you were renting and you're renting for $1,000 a month. I just pulled that out of my head and it's very even and that's nice. So $1,000 a month. And let's say you could buy a house and have a mortgage for exactly that same $1,000 a month. The nice thing about that scenario is no change in your monthly out of pocket, right? So let's look at the differences and how they compare. Let's start with renting. So your monthly rent, we already said it, right? $1,000 a month, easy. Okay. After 5 years, you will have spent a whopping $60,000 renting your home. And after 10 years, we'll double that, of course, and it will be $120,000. So over 10 years, and that's a super long time, I realize, but it just gives you a sense. You'll have spent $120,000 renting your home. Well worth it. You've lived in that home for 10 years. You've had a roof over your head and all those kinds of things, but you will have put that amount of money out. And so let's look at what you got for that. Well, obviously you got a place to live. Like there's a value to that. There's no question. But did you get any equity? Did you gain any financial scenario because of that renting? Well, no, you didn't. You didn't get any equity at all. Did you increase did the value of your home increase over the course of time? So, if you buy a home for $150,000 right now, 10 years from now, it's probably going to be worth more than that. It depends on the market, of course, but it can increase in value. And of course, if you're renting, you would not have that. What about your upkeep expenses though? Did you have to replace the roof? Did you have to replace the furnace? Did you have to repaint the house? No, you didn't have to do any of that stuff. That's part of the positive to renting, right? And that also cost you $0. So that's a really good thing. So you didn't gain any equity. The value of your home that you owned didn't increase. So that's another type of equity. And you didn't have to pay any upkeep expenses either. Let's look at buying. Let's say you're going to buy a $150,000 house. I kind of looked this up. I tried to figure out, okay, well, what could we get to $1,000 a month? What's realistic? And so $150,000 house with a 30-year, 5% fixed rate mortgage. Now, there's a lot in that, and I'm not going to dig into it right now, but that's a pretty common type of mortgage. So if you got that mortgage and you paid $7,500 down payment, then that would add up to about $1,000 a month payment. So that would give you a sense of exactly what you can get for that $1,000 a month, about $150,000 house if you get the right loan. Your monthly mortgage would be $1,000. Over the course of 5 years, you will have spent exactly $60,000, the same as renting, and over the course of 10 years, you will have spent $120,000. So the out-of-pocket costs on the surface are exactly the same as renting. You'll have spent the same amount of money. What will your equity be? Well, I kind of looked it up and I looked at what that basically would add up to, and just paying $1,000 a month down on a 30-year mortgage, you'd have about $13,000 of equity after 5 years. So that's pretty good, right? Now, your house is likely going to increase in value as well. I've chosen a very low 2% increase value. It's possible that it could go up by more than that. But this is a safe number. If it increased in value by 2% per year, you would have another $15,000 that you had made off of your investment in your own home. And so you would have, there's $28,000 more there after 5 years than you had before. You'd also have upkeep expenses though. And when I looked at really the details of it, I figured $2,000 a year it might even be low guess really, but let's just use that $2,000 a year. You would have spent $10,000 on upkeep expenses. After 10 years, we would do the same thing and we would just basically double those. Now you've got $62,000 of equity that you would not have had if you had rented the house. $62,000, but you also have upkeep expenses at $20,000. So after 10 years with these very conservative numbers that I'm making up, you would have $42,000 of equity essentially in this property. And that means if you wanted after 10 years to sell your house, you likely could make $42,000 off of it. Now you could of course make tons more, and if things went wrong, you could make tons less. But this basic premise gives you a sense of what the value of owning a home is. You're going to grow that equity and the value of your home is probably going to go up. And so you increase that value as well. And with this very conservative look, after 10 years, you could have $40,000 in your pocket that you would not have had if you were renting. So that's just a way to look at it. So renting, you gained $0 over the course of that time. And buying, you gained, up to $18,000. That's after 5 years, I would think. And then after 10 years, the same. Renting, you don't have any equity at all. Buying, you have about $42,000. Again, I feel like I need to say, this is based off of generalized numbers that I came up with, but based off of what I see in the market, what I see in growth. In fact, I think these are super conservative numbers and that you could make a lot more money off of your house over the course of 10 years than $42,000, but you could make less as well, obviously, depending on the market. So, does it make money sense? Well, buying definitely has the potential to be a lot better for you over the course of time than renting, because when you're renting, you cannot grow that equity. On the other side, renting, you don't have any of the risk, you don't have any of the expenses, and so there are some things there too. But I think in general, buying a home, if you can do it, and if all the things I'm going to talk about after this line up, then it does make money sense to own your home rather than renting your home. There's a reason tons of people have investment properties that they want to rent to you, because owning that home is valuable and they can make money off it, and they've realized that. And if you own your own home, then you get in on that investment capacity and ability. You get to make money too, instead of having someone else make money off of your rent. So it does make money sense, assuming those basic premises that I just created. So is it the right time? Is now the right time to buy a house? That obviously is one of the big questions you're asking. So I wanted to go back to an ancient Chinese proverb that, when is the best time to plant a tree? And the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. I just showed you, if you had bought a house 10 years ago, it's very likely that you would have equity up to $40,000, $50,000 in the house that you owned. But when's the next best time to plant that tree? Well, it's obvious, and that's today. So if all these other pieces make sense, if it all lines up for you right now, if your finances are right, if the market is right, then today is a great time to buy. I mean, if it works for you, if it makes sense, then today is a better time to buy than 5 years down the road, because you want to start building that equity and you want to get that increased value in your home as soon as possible. Does that make sense? Okay. So building equity takes time, so the sooner the better if you're going to buy, but what? There are two things you got to get right first. There's a couple of things that you really do need to get right first. And the first one is your credit. So it is not the right time to buy, in my opinion, if your credit is bad. If your credit is in bad shape, we've created some great videos on how to fix that, how to address that, how to make your credit better, but it takes time. It takes time. And if your credit is bad right now, it just might not be the right time for you to buy. You can force it with bad credit. You can get a loan a lot of times and force yourself into a homeownership situation. But I see a lot of folks who don't have good credit, putting themselves in bad situations, and ending up buying a house they shouldn't have bought. Just wait, wait a couple years, get your credit right, get yourself put together on the financial side, and then buy a house. It makes so much more sense. And on that same line, you got to start saving up for a down payment. There's 10% is awesome. 5% is really the minimum that you should put down. And, most people don't just have that money. I used that $7,500 example earlier. I don't have $7,500 just sitting around. You probably don't either. And so it's time now to start putting money aside. Put a little bit of money aside, have it automatically withdrawn from your checking account and put into your savings account. Ask your parents if, they can help out. Whatever your scenario is, having some down payment money is going to make the purchase process way easier and way more profitable for you in the end, because you can get a better loan with a better interest rate, along with lots of other things. So these two things must be right. Your credit and your down payment have to be right for it to be the right time. And I think a rookie mistake is also buying for a short period of time. So if you are only going to be in your town, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but if you're only going to be in your town for a few moments, a year, 2 years even, it's probably not the right time to buy. If you think you're going to move, it's probably good to rent. Just stick with renting. It's okay because, it takes time to make money off of your investment in a home. And you can't do that if you're going to be leaving in 2 years. So if you're, I think a rookie mistake is buying for a short period of time. Okay, what about life changes? What if my life changes? This is kind of what I was just talking about. It could be good if your life changes, you're moving, and your life suddenly changes. You bought a house a year ago. It could be good if you're already in the situation. Great. I don't think if you know you're going to move in a year, I don't think you should buy. But if you already bought a year ago, maybe you could sell in an up market. Right now around the United States, it is an up market in many communities, not all communities, but many communities. It's an up market, which means that a seller is in a good position. You can likely make money off of your house because lots of people want to buy. So you could be selling in an up market, and that could be good. It could be good if you could keep the house as a rental. I just said lots of people buy properties for investment and rent them to other people. There's a reason for that. Now, there's a lot of work involved in it too, and it's not for everyone. It's certainly, if you only have one house in a town and you have to find someone to take care of that house and deal with problems when a renter has the sink is overflowing or the toilet is overflowing, you have to deal with a lot of things about a house, but it's possible you could keep the house as a rental and, have a side income from that. It could be bad, though, if any of those things are the opposite. So you're selling in a down market or something like that. So let's talk about hidden costs. What are the hidden costs? Well, there's closing costs. The closing costs are really all about all the things that are cost as a part of buying a house. So that can be paying for the inspector who does the inspection during the process, the appraisal that the mortgage company asks you to do. It could be the insurance. It could be the property taxes. There's lots of costs associated with buying a house. Now, that's not a problem if you own that house over a period of time because you'll make that money back. But if it's a short period of time, that's one of the reasons why, there's hidden costs there. You have to think about what are the closing costs. Like I already talked about, the down payment, usually at least 5% of the purchase price. So if you're buying a $150,000 house, 5% would be $7,500. You've got to have that there, and that's got to be in your bank or in some way. You've got to have a down payment. Now, you can get a loan with zero down. They still exist. They used to exist more than they do now. And there are down payment assistance programs for folks in a lower income situation that you should definitely check out. We've created a video associated with that I'll put right at the top. But having 5% down at least is something that you've got to save for and you've got to have. So that's a hidden cost that you don't necessarily think about, but is definitely there and is one of the biggest chunks that you're going to have to deal with is the down payment. And then taxes and insurance, kind of already talked about those, but they can go up and change your monthly payment. A lot of times insurance can be, $1,000 a year, $2,000 a year, something like that. And taxes totally depend on the community and the tax makeup of the community, but can be a huge chunk of money. So when you're in that buying process or when you're thinking about buying, you got to say, okay, what types of taxes are associated with this property and what types of insurance, because you're going to have to tack that onto your monthly. If you find out you want to buy a house And you go out and you say, all right, what are the taxes going to be? And you say, well, in this town for this size house, the taxes are probably going to be $2,000 a year. And the insurance, let's say the insurance is going to be, $1,000 a year. So we got $3,000. We have to split that between, in 12. So that's somewhere around $280. That's going to affect your monthly mortgage payment by $280. So, that's something you've got to figure out and think about. Okay. So those are the hidden costs. And finally, I brought this up a little bit earlier, the upkeep expenses. You may need a new roof. That could be $7,000 or $8,000. A furnace tends to be $4,000 or $5,000. Appliances can be $1,000 a piece. Just mowing the lawn. I mean, maybe you go out and buy a $500 lawnmower and you mow your own lawn, which makes sense. Maybe you have someone come out and that's $20, every 2 weeks or whatever. That's pretty low, but that's what I charged when I was 15. So, probably double that. It's probably like $40 a shot or something. Those are all upkeep expenses that you're going to have to deal with. And those are all costs that come after the fact. All of these upkeep expenses, if you're not prepared for them, can smack you in the face. And we don't want that, right? Like the whole point is to say, okay, what is it? Is it a right time for me to buy a house? And you say, okay, well, if I'm going to go out and look for a house, am I going to go out and look for a house that has a brand new roof, a brand new furnace, brand new appliances? So I know I don't have to deal with any of these upkeep expenses. That's one way to do it. Probably going to pay more money for the house in that scenario though. Or you can buy an older house and know that you're going to have a whole bunch of costs associated with this stuff. And if you're smart about your finances, you're smart about the situation, then you build that into what you know it's going to cost to own a home, and it can be absolutely worth it. You just have to understand it. There's a huge difference between knowing the costs associated with owning a home and getting smacked in the face by them. When I bought my first home, it was beat up. I barely had enough money to buy the house itself, and I didn't think about any of this stuff. And I just got smacked in the face by one thing, smacked in the face by another thing. And it just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm spending all this money on this house. I didn't think about this $8,000 roof I was going to have to deal with. Oh my gosh, now my furnace isn't working. And then I turn around and try and sell it. And I didn't make, I sold it for less than I put into it by a long shot. That was simply because I didn't get it. I didn't understand. And you're not going to be in that situation because you do get it and you do understand, but you got to be thinking about these types of things. So the last hidden cost is those upkeep expenses. All right, let's get to the bonus. What's the fifth question? Is investing in that house worth it? If your finances in your life moment say yes, you still need to buy smart. Man, again, I did not do this well because you'll go out and look at houses. And if you work with a realtor, they'll take you to some different houses. They'll be in your price range. And you'll see one that has all new appliances and all this kind of stuff, but the square footage and maybe the look of it and the vibe of it just are not really what you want, but it's in your financial scenario, right? It's right at the amount of money you want to spend. And then they'll take you to another one where it's the same price and you get all this additional square footage and it has character and it's older and it's cool. And you walk around and you're like, oh, I could just fix that thing and that thing. And you just get sucked into it because it's, like older houses are cool. And there's nothing wrong with an older house. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with an older house. But especially when you get into those scenarios, you've got to be super careful because you've got to realize if it has an old roof, you got to realize if it has old appliances, you got to realize if it's a money pit and you're going to end up spending tens of thousands of dollars. You may turn that house into the most beautiful thing you've ever seen and live in it for 30 years and have a wonderful life and, make lots of memories. And in the end, make lots of money off of it too. That might be okay, but you gotta be careful. Is investing in that house worth it? Sometimes the houses that have the most character are also the ones that are going to sap your pocketbook the most. Doesn't mean you shouldn't buy an older house or a house with character at all. Just means you have to be smart and make sense of that purchase and not buy just on your heart. Of course, you're going to buy on your heart. It's your home. It's the place you're going to be living. But don't buy just on your heart. Buy on your finances too, and buy based on the information from a smart realtor who's telling you what's really going on. And that inspection, get an inspection. And if the inspection just has tons of problems, that might be a reason to back off because investing in that house may not be worth it. So you've got to understand your community And you've got to understand the type of house that will sell easily when you are ready to sell. You know, if you don't have a lot of money, if you don't have a lot of carpenter skills or whatever, don't buy the house that's going to be a money pit, because it's not going to sell easily when you're ready. If there's a house that's too good to be true, there's probably a reason that it's too good to be true. So just be smart about that. If you're a carpenter, if you're a person who knows how to fix a house, if your dad is someone who's ready to jump in and fix that house with you, maybe it's the right one for you. But if you're not, just be smart and invest in the right house. Okay, so the rookie mistake, in my opinion, is simply not working with a realtor. First of all, it's free to work with a realtor. Realtors do not cost the buyer. The cost is connected with the seller, and I dig into that again in a different video. But there is zero reason not to work with a realtor. Find a good realtor. If you don't know a good realtor, watch our videos on how to find the right realtor. Find someone good who's going to take good care of you, who's going to be honest with you, who's going to show you the houses that are in your price range and not in somebody else's price range, or not in the price range that your realtor knows that you really want to be at, but you're not. A good realtor is just like gold in your hands. No reason not to use realtors. So go, use one. I think it's a rookie mistake not to. Okay. In conclusion, when is it not a good time to buy a house? Well, I think if you're leaving town soon, not a good time. If your finances aren't stable, if you can't save for a down payment, or your credit is bad, it may not be a good time. If your credit's bad, I already said that. And if the real estate market is off, you need to be careful. Understanding the real estate market a little bit is important. And if, for example, the real estate market is super high, maybe it's not the right time to buy, because you're going to be paying premium prices. And then if the market falls off, you're going to lose that equity right off, and you don't want that to happen. So ask your realtor a little bit about your local real estate market and what's going on. Ask them to describe it a little bit. Do a little bit of research and see what's going on. So those are the not good times. The totally a good times are if you'll be around for a few years, right? If you're going to spend some time in a town, 5-6 years at least, I think it's likely a good scenario to buy. If your finances are stable, I typed stable twice. If your finances are stable, then you need to, it's a good time. If your finances are stable, that's a good time. If your credit is solid, it's a good time. If the smart home is in your budget, I think that's a huge one. If the smart home to buy is in your budget, a home that you could live in for a while, but could also sell, think about the other side. It's so hard as a buyer to be like, well, could it sell? And it's also hard because a lot of times the house that could sell is one that lots of people want. Again, that's why a good realtor can get you in early on, can help you to make the right offer so you can get that house. But make sure the smart home is in your budget. All right. So what we learned here, well, we dug into these 4 questions. Is it the right time? Does it make money sense? What are the hidden costs? And what if my life changes? I hope now that you really feel like you have a sense, you have some questions to ask yourself. Does it make money sense? Is it the right time? Is it okay if my life changes 3 years from now? Do I understand the hidden costs? Do I know what they are? And I can make sense of them and know how they'll affect my budget in the next couple of years. Those are the things we learned. And those are the questions you should be asking yourself as you buy a house. And then that final bonus is that house right for me? If everything else lines up and you're out looking for houses, pick a smart house that you could turn around and sell if you need to, but also has character. No house is perfect. You're not going to find a perfect house. It doesn't exist. But you want to find the right house for you, and you want to avoid money pits, and you want to avoid houses that you just thought were charming and suddenly no one else wants to buy when 2 years down the road or 5 years down the road, you turn around and decide you want to buy. Okay, that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this video. As always, the last step in the video is to subscribe to our channel. We will make sure that our best information is in your inbox as soon as we release it. Until the next time, I'm Jeremy. Have a wonderful day.